It's always incredible when a cold case is finally solved, especially the ones that have gone unanswered for decades. But the most heartbreaking are the cases involving young children, kids who are too young to know right from wrong, too young to see the dangers waiting in the world, bright-eyed, full of curiosity, ready to soak in every part of life. That's what makes the unsolved murders of children feel so dark. It's the loss of innocence, the loss of possibility, the loss of a future that never even got the chance to begin. Today's case is about a 6-year-old Georgia boy whose life was stolen from him and whose body was found discarded in the woods like he was nothing. For over 20 years, no one knew who he was. No one came forward to report a missing child. No one even seemed to notice he was gone. Until, finally, in 2022, there was a break in the case. Authorities learned the boy's name and then arrested his own mother. Think about that for a moment. A mother living her life in plain sight, going about her days like everything was normal, while her son had been dead for over 2 decades. The person meant to love and protect him the most, accused of being the reason he was gone, and never even reporting him missing. It's horrifying. The thought that no one around her noticed, that no one realized a young boy was gone, forgotten for over 20 years, but not anymore. William DaShawn Hamilton's story will not be forgotten. His life, stolen too soon, will be remembered. And now, after all these years, he is finally getting the justice he deserves. Today we're going behind the headlines to examine the decades-long mystery of a young boy who never had the chance to truly live, and whose case is finally getting the answers it has so long deserved. On the afternoon of February 26, 1999, a cemetery worker was walking the grounds of Clifton United Methodist Church in DeKalb County, Georgia, when they stumbled across something that would haunt the community for decades. There, in a shallow grave in the woods near the cemetery, at the corner of Clifton Springs Road and Clifton Spring Church Road, was the body of a young boy. His remains were so badly decomposed, fully skeletonized by the time he was found, that it was clear he had been out there for months, alone, exposed to the elements, and simply just discarded and forgotten about. Investigators believe that it appeared as if someone had laid out the young boy's body. One investigator later said that it felt like whoever left him there wanted to place him on holy ground, but there was nothing holy about what had happened to this child. No one knew who he was for decades. DNA tests confirmed he was a young boy between 5 and 7 years old, African American, around 4 feet tall, weighing about 50 pounds. He was wearing a blue and white plaid shirt, red denim jeans, and nearly brand new brown Timberland boots. He should have been getting ready for a day at school, playing with friends, learning to ride a bike, or watching Saturday morning cartoons. Instead, he was found lifeless in the cold dirt, and no one could even say his name. Authorities sent out every detail they could about the boy's clothing, his boots, his estimated age to the local media at the time, and the desperate hope that someone somewhere would recognize him, that someone could identify who this boy was. But nothing came. No parents reported him missing, no neighbors called in a tip, no teachers wondered why a child hadn't come back to class after winter break. Nothing. And here's what's even more heartbreaking. The boy's cause of death was never determined. They couldn't say for sure how he died. It didn't appear initially that any foul play was involved, but the autopsy revealed that the boy did have cold medicine in his system. Was he sick and someone tried to help him, or was it given to him for another reason, something far more sinister? We just don't know. Forensic testing also suggested that he was likely from the local region, someone within DeKalb County, the Atlanta area maybe, South Georgia, or even as far down as northern Florida. So he wasn't some child from across the country dropped off in the middle of the night. He was local. He was someone's neighbor, someone's son, someone's classmate, a member of the DeKalb community. Imagine how chilling that is. A young boy, dead, discarded like trash, and for decades, not a single person came forward to say they even knew him. Authorities tried everything. They brought in a forensic artist, Harvey Pratt, to create a clay reconstruction of the boy's face, hoping that seeing the child's likeness might jog someone's memory. The image was haunting. A young boy's face, innocent and small, baby teeth and a small smile captured in clay, pleading for someone to recognize him. Investigators nicknamed him Dennis, just so they could call him something, anything instead of him just being nameless, as they worked to figure out who he was. Authorities pinned their hopes on the boy's clothing and the clay reconstruction to finally bring answers. They noted that the shirt and pants the boy was wearing hadn't been manufactured since 1995, which suggested he might have been wearing hand-me-downs from an older brother or cousin. It was a small clue, but it was something. And those fairly new Timberland boots he was wearing, along with the reconstruction of his face, were among investigators' best chances of identifying him. The only other potential clues were that the boy had a fracture on the right side of his skull beneath the eye socket, and there was a presence of cough syrup in his body. Investigators pored over nearby school records searching for any child who didn't return after winter break, hoping that somewhere someone would notice a child was missing. For a brief moment, it seemed like there might be a breakthrough. At one point, investigators thought the boy might have been Dorian Thomas, a child last seen riding his bike around his neighborhood in Amarillo, Texas. But that lead, like so many others, went cold. Despite having no name to put on his grave, authorities held a memorial service for the boy at Clifton United Methodist Church, the same place where he was found. They wanted to honor his life, even if they didn't yet know who he was, because that's what he deserved. Someone to mourn him, to acknowledge that he existed. Then, in October 1999, another potential lead surfaced. A woman using the name Dawn Anderson called the coroner's office and said the child's name was Cable Brown. Because of her emotional state and the poor quality of the call, authorities couldn't even confirm whether or not they heard the name correctly. The call was traced to the Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne, Florida, but when investigators tried to follow up, they couldn't locate anyone using that name, nor could they find any missing child with that name. So that lead ultimately went nowhere. Over the years, investigators chased down countless tips, hoping any one of them might finally reveal who this young boy was. But time and time again, those leads went nowhere. At one point, a teacher in Georgia called in, thinking the remains might belong to a student who had suddenly stopped showing up to class. It felt like a promising lead, but when police tracked it down, they found that that particular boy was alive and well. Just like that, another lead vanished, leaving investigators right back where they started. They checked school records, tracked missing children cases, followed every lead, and even received a tip that turned out to be a dead end. The boy's Timberland boots were traced to the Atlanta market, but even that lead went cold. But the reality was brutal. Years turned into decades, and the boy remained unidentified with no headstone, no family claiming him, no one to tell his story. Authorities had no answers. Was he murdered? Did he die accidentally? Or did something else happen? Was anyone looking for him? Did anyone care? For over 20 years, this child was known only to the medical examiner's office, his remains sealed away, waiting for someone to finally say his name, waiting for someone to identify him. Now, let that sink in. A young boy was found discarded in the woods, and for more than 2 decades, 20 years, no one claimed him, no one identified him, and it seemed like no one even missed him. It was as if he had been dropped there from the sky, forgotten by the world, treated like he was nothing. But he wasn't nothing. He was a child who deserved to be seen, to be known, and to be remembered. And for a long time, it felt like this case would never be solved. Like the truth about who he was and what happened to him would forever be buried with him in the shallow grave. Even though decades slipped by without answers, without even a name for the little boy found in those woods, there were 2 women who refused to forget him. 2 women who couldn't let this child's story end with him being discarded like he was nothing. 2 women who believed he deserved justice, a name, and the dignity of being remembered. One of them was reporter Angeline Hartman, working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Angeline covered the case year after year, hoping that one day someone would recognize the child's face or clothing and come forward. She didn't want him to be forgotten. Angeline Hartman was actually the first reporter on the scene the day the boy's remains were found, and from that moment on, she made it her mission to keep his story alive. Back then, Angeline was a crime reporter at WAGA-TV in Atlanta, covering the case extensively for 6 years. In 2005, she left for a job at America's Most Wanted, where she kept telling this boy's story. Later, when she joined the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as her communications director, she still refused to let this case fade into the background. Angeline said, "With each career move, it just stayed with me. I was there from day one, and I kept doing story after story after story. I talk about it in everyday life too, at dinner parties, at board meetings. Everyone who knew me knew about this case." Just like the investigators, Angeline couldn't understand how, after the first facial reconstruction was released, no one came forward to say they recognized this child. How could a young boy just vanish with no one noticing? She knew, deep down, that she couldn't let this case go cold. Everyone deserves justice, but especially a little boy who, even after more than 20 years, still didn't have a name. And Angeline continued to make sure this boy's story stayed alive and in the public eye. NCMEC was deeply involved in the effort to identify him, featuring his case on their website and following every lead they received. In February 2019, on the 20th anniversary of the discovery of the boy's remains, a NCMEC forensic artist created a new updated facial reconstruction in hopes that fresh eyes might recognize him. At the same time, Angeline launched a new 6-episode series on her podcast, Inside Crime with Angeline Hartman, where she once again told his story, determined to find anyone who knew who this boy was. And it turns out, someone did. The other woman is Ava McNeil. And according to Ava, this reconstruction photo uploaded to the NCMEC website looked awfully a lot like a young boy whom she helped raise and care for decades earlier. Ava once cared deeply for a little boy named William DaShawn Hamilton, a boy she used to babysit in Charlotte, North Carolina in the 90s. Ava wasn't just a babysitter. She was in many ways more like a mother to William than his own mother was. She spent nearly 4 years caring for him before and after school, describing him as happy, curious, a jokester, and a wise little boy who loved reading encyclopedias and using big words. She called him an old soul trapped in a young boy's body. But Ava says William's mother, Teresa Black, wasn't the affectionate, nurturing, motherly type. She was distant, cold, and impatient with William. It was Ava who comforted him, who encouraged him, who loved him. She was basically his surrogate mother, even though they weren't related. Ava noticed that William often came to her with clothes that smelled like he wasn't being bathed regularly. It struck her as odd because Teresa, William's mom, always kept herself well groomed. Her hair, nails, and makeup were always done, and she had a good job with access to resources. But it seemed like she never put that same care into her son. Others around them also saw concerning things too. One friend reportedly saw Teresa punch William in the chest and called him a punk just because he got upset when he couldn't go outside to play. Another time, she shoved him into another room simply because he complained about the food, punished for simply being a kid who still doesn't know right from wrong. Then, in December 1998, Teresa told Ava that she was withdrawing William from school and moving them both to Atlanta to be closer to family. Ava was heartbroken but tried to understand. Teresa made it seem like this was the best option for both her and William. Ava vividly remembers hugging William tightly that day, not wanting to let him go, as Teresa practically pried him away and put him in the car. And that was the last time Ava ever saw William alive. Months later, however, Teresa returned to Charlotte, but William wasn't with her. When Ava asked where William was, Teresa always had a different excuse. She would brush off Ava's questions, never giving a clear answer, usually just providing a vague answer like, "Oh, he's just with some family," but never really providing much concrete details as to who specifically. And that never did sit right with Ava. Ava started searching for William herself. She spent hours in the public library copying down phone numbers from Georgia phone books, calling hospitals, police stations, homeless shelters, bus stations, anywhere she could think of. She would fall asleep surrounded by papers, wake up and start searching again.
I got phone books from the library, from everywhere, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. And I called and I called and I called every hospital, every agency that I could, but it was always a dead end. Every time the phone rung, from the time she came back without him, I answered every call. Every call. If I missed it, I called it back. Every call I answered. Every call. Hoping and praying it was him or information saying that he was okay.
I cannot emphasize it enough that you did not stop. I mean, we're not just talking once a couple of times, once or twice a year.
Every day. Every day. 4, 6, 8, sometimes 12 hours a day. Sometimes I went to sleep with the phone and the computer on me, papers on me, papers in the bed, pens, every day. Every day. That was like my job to find him.
Life moved on, and eventually Ava had 2 daughters of her own. But she says she never stopped looking for William. Her daughters grew up knowing about him, as if they too were waiting for the day he would be found. Then in May 2020, while searching online, Ava came across the facial reconstruction of the unidentified boy found in Georgia back in 1999 on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website. The moment she saw it, she says, she knew instantly. Deep in her heart, she knew that was William. The little boy she had loved, the boy who she cared for, the boy no one else seemed to be looking for, the boy who had been missing for over 20 years, discarded and left nameless, finally had a chance to come home.
Hello. I think I may have some information on the little boy that has no name. This is about the little boy found February 26, 1999. Please return my call. Thank you.
When I seen that picture, I just screamed. And tears just start. Because I knew that was him. It was no doubt. That was him.
In June 2022, after more than 2 decades of waiting, there was finally a breakthrough. Thanks to Ava's relentless search efforts, her tip and updated forensic DNA testing, the DeKalb County District Attorney finally announced that the boy, who had been nameless for over 20 years, had finally been identified as 6-year-old William DaShawn Hamilton. The DeKalb District Attorney released this statement. Far too long, this precious little boy had no name and no story. Through the tireless efforts of several individuals and organizations who refused to let him be forgotten, William has been identified and justice will be served in his memory. Angeline Hartman, who had kept William's story alive for years, shared how Ava's determination made the difference. For more than 2 decades, a woman in Charlotte followed her gut feeling that something wasn't right. She made calls, scoured the internet, and talked to anyone who would listen. We're grateful she never stopped searching until she found that rendering of William online, giving investigators the missing piece to solve this 23-year-old mystery.
In this case, the woman who called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children knew William, and she knew William's mother very well. For more than 20 years, she wondered what happened to William. And she always felt that something wasn't right. She made it her personal mission to find him. And when I say she made it her personal mission, that is not an understatement. She was actively searching for William every single day.
Justice has no time limit. When my team actually got going on this case, it only took that one tip, that one thread. And once they started pulling it, they're like, we got this. Now that we have an identity, we can follow all of the breadcrumbs, and they did. And here we are. And it is a truly memorable moment for William, really.
But that wasn't the only update. William's mother, 45-year-old Teresa Ann Bailey Black, was indicted for his murder. She was charged with 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of cruelty to children, aggravated assault, and concealing the death of another. Teresa was arrested in Phoenix, Arizona on June 29, 2022, and extradited back to Georgia to face trial. Once investigators confirmed the identity of the child, they then tracked down William's biological father, William Harris Hamilton, in North Carolina. He didn't even know that his son had died until police knocked on his door. He told authorities that Teresa had kept him away from William, refusing to let him see or contact his son. So he had spent all those years assuming William was still with her, just didn't want to have any contact with his father. Investigators collected a DNA sample from him, and they were then able to confirm William's identity by matching it to Teresa's DNA as well. When investigators first questioned Teresa about her son in early 2022, she ultimately denied everything. She told them she had never lived in Atlanta and that she didn't even have a son, but that wasn't the case. Teresa pleaded not guilty during her arraignment and was held in the DeKalb County Jail awaiting trial. But investigators knew this would not be an easy open and shut case. Yes, William had a name, but decades had passed, evidence had washed away, and witnesses were scarce. Prosecutors asked the public for help, seeking anyone who may have seen Teresa or William in the Atlanta area between 1998 and 1999. Teresa had briefly worked at the now closed Pleasers Gentlemen's Club on Cleveland Avenue, and had sought help at the Atlanta Day Shelter for Women and Children. According to the indictment, it was believed that Teresa had given William a combination of diphenhydramine and acetaminophen, often used as a sleep aid, and then struck him in the head, causing serious injury that led to his death. She also failed to seek medical help for him. By the time of her arrest, Teresa was living a new life in Arizona with an 18-year-old daughter and a long-term partner, holding a steady job for 12 years while the truth about William remained buried for over 2 decades. Since Teresa's indictment, Ava and Angeline, the two women who fought year after year to make sure William would not be forgotten, became friends, united in their love and fight for justice for him. They attended Teresa's murder trial together, hoping that after so many years, William would finally get the justice he deserved. Ava shared that while she felt peace knowing what happened to William, it still brought her deep sadness to think about the little boy she had once helped raise and the life he never got to live. It's a joy because I know he's finally at peace now, that he's been found. But it's always a sadness too, seeing him as a child, seeing how happy and smart he was, so many possibilities of what he could have done or who he could have been. Even with the huge break in the case and Teresa Black finally under arrest, it turned out that getting justice for William wasn't going to be simple. On paper, it looked like an open and shut case. A mother accused of drugging and killing her 6-year-old son before leaving his body in the woods to start a new life. But once the trial began, it was clear there were 2 very different stories being told in that courtroom. During opening statements, prosecutor Shannon Hodder told jurors that Teresa had given William a toxic mix of cough syrup and pain relievers, hit him in the head, and then dumped his body near a church cemetery so she could walk away from her old life and move to Arizona.
A very slow and painful death, and was then left to rot in the woods until some random gravedigger happened to go relieve himself in the woods almost 3 months later. This is why Teresa Black has been charged in this indictment with 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of cruelty to children, 1 count of aggravated assault, and concealing the death of another.
The prosecution described Teresa as a mother who lied to investigators, initially denying she even had a son or ever lived in Atlanta. Prosecutors argued that she kept William's father away from him, collecting child support even after William was gone, and then abandoned her son like trash in the woods. But Teresa's public defenders painted a completely different picture. They described her as a young, overwhelmed single mother trying to survive. Teresa was just 15 when William was born, and by the time she was 18, her own mother had died, leaving her alone to care for him. When she lost her job in Charlotte at 21, she moved to Atlanta hoping to find work, but soon became homeless with only a few $100s to her name. Her attorney argued that she wasn't trying to hurt her son. She was doing the best she could. Somehow I don't buy that.
I'm not judging you. I'm not. I need you to be very specific with me, because if something happened back when you were a young single mother and you got scared or anything like that, I need you to tell me. Because I know where William is, and I think you do.
I don't, you know where he is? Of course it was, I did not do the right thing. I know that I should have left him.
The defense claimed that on the night William died, Teresa and William had fallen asleep in a wooded area along Clifton Springs Road because it was quiet and felt safer than the streets. They said she gave him over-the-counter medication when he felt sick, like any proud parent would, and then woke up to find him dead beside her. Terrified and alone, she panicked and walked away, leaving his body there. Teresa will tell you herself that she made a huge mistake by walking away. She'll tell you she's not perfect, but she did not hurt William, and the state cannot prove that she did. Her defense argued that the evidence didn't support the claims that Teresa abused or killed her son. She had never forgotten him and never stopped regretting what she did. She didn't tell anyone about William for a day. That day became a week. A week became months and years. And it became 23 years, her attorney Ryan Bozarth told the jury. But she never forgot him, and she never stopped regretting that mistake. In the courtroom, Teresa sat quietly, sometimes wiping away tears as she listened. She chose not to testify in her defense, but the weight of the past 2 decades hung heavy as both sides presented their case. The prosecution insisted that Teresa was responsible for William's death, arguing that she wanted to be free of her child so she could start over. The defense countered that she was a scared young mother, alone and overwhelmed, who made a terrible decision out of fear but did not kill her child. Everyone in that courtroom seemed to want justice for William, but as the trial wrapped, it was clear that proving what really happened all those years ago would not be as straightforward as many once thought. After more than 20 witnesses and 4 days of testimony, the prosecution rested its case. They painted Teresa as a mother who had failed her child, letting him suffer without medical care, and then abandoning him in the woods before lying about his existence for decades.
Like any proud parent would.
While Teresa Black's defense team called only one witness before wrapping up their case that same afternoon, everyone braced for what felt like a long overdue moment of justice for William. But when the jury returned, the room fell into a stunned, heavy silence. After hours of deliberation, the jury found Teresa Black not guilty on 5 of the 6 charges, including murder, as well as aggravated assault and cruelty to children. The only charge they convicted her of was concealing her son's death. As each not guilty was read aloud, William's biological father quietly stood up and walked out of the courtroom, unable to hear another word. Many in the room were left shaken, struggling to process what felt like a devastating blow after so many years fighting for William's justice. Prosecutors who had pushed hard for a conviction were visibly disappointed. One juror later shared that while they did not want a not guilty outcome, there simply wasn't enough physical evidence left after all these years to convict Teresa on the most serious charges. According to jurors, their hands were tied.
We all were aware that Tylenol and Benadryl was found in William's body at the time of his death. However, not a single medical expert that spoke to us could tell us the dosage, whether it was toxic or therapeutic. Cruelty to children by not seeking medical care. And that one was a little bit more difficult. However, at the same time, once again, there wasn't enough evidence to support that Teresa knew her child was showing enough symptoms to take medical care.
And Logan says evidence didn't clearly show William's jaw was broken by his mother, despite hours of testimony on the injury. That led to a not guilty charge for aggravated assault.
This could have happened with animal scavenging post-mortem, and that's all we had to go on.
However, the concealing the death of another charge was easier.
Because she literally left the body in the woods, regardless of if he died there, if it was bought there. The fact remains she left the body in the woods and she lied about it.
Juror Jonathan Middleman says he was watching Black as the verdict was read.
She wasn't elated. I think at the end of the day, the defense attorney maybe thought that they would get off on all accounts, and maybe the fact that the 6th one didn't go their way, but I didn't see a lot of emotion at all.
At the end of the day, these jurors say they aren't happy with the outcome, but they feel like they did their job.
I have come to the conclusion that yes, she was a liar, and it was very disgusting to go back and look at all of her lies. However, in this case, none of her lies were not what she was being charged with. Yes, she may be not a great human. She may have been a failing mother who was trying her best. However, those were not the charges that the jury had to find Teresa Black guilty on.
DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston spoke to the community's heartbreak during a press conference.
And I appreciate those of you that were here to cover when we had that press conference and we stood in this room on that day where we were able to finally say his name after so long. But today, a DeKalb County jury convicted Miss Black on a charge of concealing the death of another and acquitting her of felony murder charges. While we respect the jury's verdict, I would be lying if I didn't say we weren't disappointed. We still believe she is responsible for young William's death. We are glad, though, that Teresa Black will be held accountable. For decades, she tried to hide the truth about what happened to her son, and that decision had far-reaching effects. People here in DeKalb County and across the country spent years working to find the truth, identify the little boy left in the woods, and return him to the family so that they could lay him to rest in the manner that he deserved. Teresa Bailey may have walked away and abandoned her son in 1999, but today I'm proud to say that the people in this room and in this community never did. Today, William DaShawn Hamilton has his name back, and he will never be forgotten.
While prosecutors promised to continue fighting for cold case victims despite the challenges, Teresa's defense team expressed relief, saying they were grateful the jury focused on the facts and the evidence. They indicated plans to appeal even the single conviction for concealing Williams' death. During sentencing, Williams' father pleaded with the judge to give the maximum sentence possible. "I just feel so bad that I never got to spend time with him, like all these people coming in and out of the courtroom. I don't know what else to say. Whatever you can give her, just give it to her." In the end, Teresa Black was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the maximum allowed for the felony charge of concealing her son's death, with part of the sentence reduced for time already served while awaiting trial. She is currently being held at the Emmanuel Women's Facility in Swainsboro, Georgia. As the courtroom emptied, there was a sense of unfinished justice hanging in the air. For many, the verdict was a reminder of how difficult it is to win convictions in cold cases, even when a child's name is fully known. But despite the heartbreak, it was also clear that William's story would never again be buried or forgotten. This is the only known photo of William DaShawn Hamilton. It's hard not to wonder who he would have become, what dreams he would have chased, or what moments he would have lived if he were still here today.
You look at this baby's face, and then to say he would be 30 years old today, that's heartbreaking.
No matter what the verdict said, the reality remains. A young boy's life ended far too soon, and his body was left in the woods as if he didn't matter. But William did matter. Two women who had never met each other felt that truth deep in their hearts. One didn't even know William firsthand, but both women knew that this young unidentified boy deserved better, deserved justice. They knew his name deserved to be spoken out loud, and his story deserved to be told. Year after year, they refused to let him be forgotten, pushing forward when leads went cold, asking questions when no one else would, and believing that one day the world would know who this little boy was.
As you know, the break in this case happened when someone called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children after seeing that reconstruction photo. We know that images like this work, and that's why we ask people to take the time, just take a moment out of your day to look. You never know when you're going to be that one person. It just takes one call.
Because of them, William has his name back, his power back, and now, so does his story. Think about this for a moment. A cold case, unsolved for more than 2 decades, finally answered. It's a powerful reminder of why we need to keep telling these stories, to keep sharing the faces of the missing and the unnamed, because somewhere out there, someone knows something. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to change everything. In this case, that one person was Ava McNeil. She never forgot William. Year after year, she followed her gut, keeping his name alive, determined to find out what happened to the little boy she once knew, even though she didn't know he was missing or dead. Something inside her told her it wasn't right, that Teresa's stories weren't adding up, and for 20 years, she refused to stop searching for answers. Because of Ava, William DaShawn Hamilton has his name back. His story didn't end alone and forgotten in the woods. It lives on. That's the power of one person. It only takes one person to love you, to fight for you, to refuse to let your story disappear. Ava wasn't even related to William, yet she went to the ends of the earth to make sure his story was told, to make sure he wasn't forgotten. If it hadn't been for her, Angeline Hartman, and for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children keeping his rendering on their website, William might still be unidentified. His case might still be unsolved, and the haunting mystery of a young boy's body found discarded in the woods may still have lingered on in DeKalb County for decades more. It's true that the longer a case goes unsolved, the colder it becomes, and the harder it is to find the answers. But that doesn't mean it's impossible, and this case is proof of that. This is why it matters that we keep sharing missing persons posters, keep telling the stories of the lost and unidentified, because you never know when that one person will see it, the one person who holds the missing piece that can break a case wide open, even decades later. Every victim deserves to have their name back, and every victim deserves their story to be told. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.